Hello my lovelies, I'm coming at you this evening from gorgeous Phnom Penh. I'm just in my hotel room at the moment. Give me a heads up if you've been to this amazing city. I'm like in love. I've definitely put this city on my places that I must live in before I die list. The vegan restaurants, the vegan options here are just incredible. There's only one vegan restaurant actually, but there's loads of different restaurants here that have like vegan options on the menu. And yeah, just like really cute vibes, amazing for digital nomads. Like if you haven't been, I really recommend. Blah blah blah. I really recommend you check it out. Okay, so today, in today's video, as promised in my last one, I wanted to make a video where I kind of go into some of the occult symbolism that I noticed while watching a couple of different Hollywood films. So today I'm doing The Great Gatsby. I might do more if this video gets a lot of views and a lot of likes, so give it a like if you like it. And if you want to see more, I wasn't really watching a lot of Hollywood films recently because I just felt like there was a lot of like mind control and a lot of programming. And I kind of took a break from just TV and films for several years actually. I haven't watched TV shows in ages unless I'm really like recommended a particular like series. I don't really watch the Idiot Box. But I've recently started getting into allegorical films. Because we've been doing a lot of research on occult symbology, you start to see it everywhere. You start to really notice it in songs, in films. It seems like everywhere they're trying to tell you the truth. They're trying to hint at, they're trying to plant seeds. So if you've been guided to this video, it's probably because you're ready to spot the subliminal messaging. And yeah, these are just some of the things that I spotted while I was watching the film, and it's by no means an exhaustive list. If you noticed anything yourself, then feel free to share it in the comments below. If you haven't watched the film, then go and watch it now. It's available on Netflix, and then come back to this video. If you've watched it already, maybe you want to watch it alongside this video. I won't be putting little bits of footage in the video because it's then going to affect my copyright claims and monetization, but I will put screenshots and subtitles where applicable so you can kind of see what's going on and what's being said in the film. So yeah, let's get into the video. Okay, so first up, we're introduced to Daisy's husband, Tom Buchanan, this character, and very early on, within the first scene, we're introduced to him as this kind of very alpha, like toxic masculine archetype. And that's evidenced here and I've got a screenshot where, he's telling our protagonist, Nick Carraway, life is something you dominate, Nick. So, we've got this really archetypal, left brain imbalanced dominator type character. So, those of you who are familiar with the kind of the divine masculine, divine feminine, and then toxic masculine, toxic feminine, either caused by left or right brain imbalance, you'll see that, overproduction and massive over reliance on the left brain, too much on intellectualism, rationality, aggression, and all these kind of archetypal masculine qualities that on their own are fine, but when they're in balance produce a dominator. We've got that represented in this character, Tom Buchanan. Okay, and then what happens is Nick walks into the drawing room and, the drapes are kind of everywhere, creating this very heavenly atmosphere. The chandeliers tinkling. You can hear like a woman giggling, like the sound of an angel. And then you can just, the way that the director Baz Luhrmann has kind of like directed this scene with, just the silhouettes of the hands and just kind of really, he's introducing Daisy as this kind of sacred, feminine, chalice, holy grail, something very covetable, something very divine, something that is a portal to the divine, to the heavenly higher realms. So she's kind of introduced in this way, and she represents this sacred feminine archetype. Okay, so I just noticed this now, but I didn't notice it when I was watching the film the first. Well, I did notice it, but now that I've watched the film with the benefit of hindsight, at the mention of Gatsby's name, you kind of, well, it's delayed by a couple of seconds, but the drapes mysteriously just, wind blows through the drapes again, kind of like how it did when Daisy was introduced. So now that Gatsby's name has been mentioned, the wind is kind of doing the same thing. So it's I kind of feel like it might be alluding to some kind of twin flame connection that they have between Daisy and Gatsby. But, I'm open to interpretation, and if people want to share their comments about that, then feel free. But, if you've seen the film, then you might know what I'm referring to. Okay, now this is not really occult, this is just like blatant. But yeah, again, introducing and perpetuating the idea of Tom Buchanan as this very toxic masculine character, where he's now referring to the rise of the coloured empires, and just perpetuating this whole white supremacy narrative. Yeah, so it's the idea, according to Tom Buchanan, that it's their job as the dominant race to watch out, otherwise all the other races will have control of things. So yeah, that's toxic masculinity, the dominator, believing that some people are better than others, some groups are better than others. I don't really need to explain racism to you guys, I would hope. Anyway. Okay, so now I'm watching this for the second time. I'm picking up on a couple of other things that I didn't notice before, but which are not really necessarily occult, but they kind of tie into some of the themes. So like here where Daisy Buchanan starts talking about when she had her daughter and Tom, her toxic masculine partner, was not there. He was somewhere else during the birth of their child with someone else. And she said that she cried when she heard that her daughter was a girl, and she hopes that her daughter is going to be a beautiful little fool, because that's the best thing that a woman can be in this world, a beautiful little fool. So she's kind of introducing the whole idea that in the society that they're living in, the best option for a woman is to embody the toxic feminine. So over-reliance on looks, under-reliance on not just intellect, but your wisdom and your intuition when you connect to, your feminine sea of emotions and, the intuitive, which is the feminine aspect. Okay, this is where we're introduced to a kind of a recurring theme in the film, where we've got the eyes of God, the all-seeing eye, the eye at the top of the pyramid, but here it's two eyes. Okay, here again, this is not occult symbolism, but this kind of feeds into the whole idea of the toxic masculine and the pressure that surrounds that, because we've got Nick Carraway, who kind of, he represents kind of, I wouldn't say necessarily a properly embodied divine masculine, because he doesn't embody the divine masculine principle of courage, but he's a nice guy, he's a good guy, like he seems to be, just like a decent character. He doesn't embody those more toxic qualities that Tom Buchanan's character does. But where he suggests that Myrtle, the toxic feminine archetype, who plays the other woman, bring along her sister for Nick, and Nick declines because, he doesn't want to engage in this kind of immoral behavior, and, he's basically being asked to go along with hiding Tom's affair from his cousin Daisy. And Tom pressures him by saying it's rude, like don't embarrass Myrtle. And this is how toxic masculinity operates, by suppressing the feminine principle of care, which Nick is kind of somewhat embodying by saying, no, 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 I don't really want to do that, because because he has morals. He doesn't want to engage in sort of moral, meaningless sex with somebody that he doesn't know, just so that he can kind of appease Tom Buchanan and kind of make him feel better about his own immoral behavior, cheating on his cousin. And then you can see, as soon as Tom has kind of asserted his alpha toxic masculinity over Nick and dominated him, the first line of the song, "Let's misbehave." Okay, hello. So, a slight change of scenery. Yeah, it got too late for me to finish that video when I was in Phnom Penh, and then I was flying to Bali the next day. So I'm in Bali now, and I'm going to finish this video from here. Okay, so the next bit is when Nick Carraway is at the party at Myrtle's house, and he kind of says, what does he say? High over the city, our yellow windows must have contributed their share of human secrets to the casual watcher in the street. And I was him too, looking up and wondering. I was within and without, enchanted and repelled by the inexhaustible variety of life. And so it's definitely this phrase, I was within and without, where I feel like he's alluding to the eyes of God, the eye at the top of the pyramid, which is actually, when it comes down to it, it's our eye. When you take your consciousness up to the highest levels and really, really connect with your higher self, you are God. So you are within and without, and you will be enchanted and repelled by the inexhaustible variety of life, because good and evil exist within every human heart. So you can be enchanted and repelled at the same time, because that's how Source experiences itself. And I think that's why we have so much preoccupation with immorality versus morality, and the temptation to kind of indulge in certain self-destructive or immoral behaviors, because we want to experience that full spectrum of experience. That's what happens. You come together as one in unity consciousness, and then you're just like, okay, I'm love, I'm everything, and then you want to experience yourself again, so you separate again. So good and evil are actually part of the same consciousness that is everything, within and without. Okay, and here we have another reference to the Watchers, or the eye, the all-seeing eye, the eye at the top of the pyramid, with this whole idea, Gatsby was always watching me. Like, Nick Carraway can feel that he's always being watched. Okay, now this is quite subliminal. If you can see the pattern on Gatsby's floor, it's kind of like a mandala, and we're going to see this symbol again. We also see it on Gatsby's ring, but it also features on the floor and in other parts of Gatsby's house at other opportunities. And, if you're not paying attention, then you'll miss it. But if you are paying attention, you'll spot it. And Baz Luhrmann's made it quite obvious to people by he keeps on showing Gatsby's ring, close-ups of the ring, to kind of allude to this symbol. Okay, so the next bit is when Nick Carraway and Gatsby are driving into New York City, and Gatsby is telling him this crazy story of how he was studied at Oxford, and then he was fighting in the war, or some nonsense story. I can't remember all the details. And then just as they're passing the poster of the oculist, Nick is asking himself about a photograph that Gatsby's just shown him to corroborate the story. And he said the photograph, even though the story sounds so far-fetched, the photograph is undoubtedly authentic, according to him. It doesn't look particularly authentic to you and me. But and then he asks himself, could it all be true? And we see the eyes of God just then. So ultimately alludes to the idea that only God knows what's true. And the only way that we can get to the truth is by seeing things from the top of the pyramid. Now, once Nick Carraway starts to question what he has always believed to be true, like many people who are on the the path of understanding and the path of trying to find out the truth, you start to question all your belief systems. So Nick is now going through that process and seeing things from a higher perspective. And as he's going over the bridge, he starts to become very confused. And it's interesting, actually, the way that Baz Luhrmann uses the element of race and racial politics and racial identity in the film. There's quite a few moments where he does this kind of subliminally, and you'll spot them, especially if you're kind of educated in kind of racial justice and things like that. But as he's coming along the bridge, he sees another car where there are, some young people having a great time in an open top car, drinking champagne, wearing, fancy gowns, and they've got a chauffeur driving them. And he notices, obviously, that the young people having a fantastic time are all black and the chauffeur is white. And this is during 1920s America, a time when things weren't necessarily like that. So he's now realizing that he's entering another dimension, if you will, where things aren't as they seem and anything is possible. And this idea is kind of further illustrated by Gatsby kind of inviting Nick into this kind of secret, hidden underground nightclub. So it's like he's an insider. He has inside knowledge, like hidden knowledge, perhaps even. And this is a place where, converse to how Tom Buchanan sees the world, where, we've got to be careful of these coloured empires and we've got to keep these people down. We see Gatsby, who is, he's not from old money, he's new money, he's a self-made man, is, even though he's presented himself as not that, but, Nick knows that isn't true. I think he's aware of the fact that Gatsby is probably lying to him. So we've got this Gatsby character who is, not wary at all of coloured people. We've got his, friend here who is played by Amitabh Bachchan, and they're partying alongside people of all different ethnicities. So it's, showing quite a different character to the Tom Buchanan character, much more of a kind of, just a bit more self-assured, somebody who's not threatened by other groups. And, we've got the Amitabh Bachchan character who's kind of telling Nick, he's affirming that Gatsby is a good guy of moral upstanding by illustrating that he's not the kind of man who would ever look at your wife. And right on cue, in walks Tom Buchanan, who obviously does covet other people's wives and sleeps with them. He's having an affair with a married woman, and he's also cheating on his own wife. And he has the audacity to call this place a den of morality, or, words to similar effect, when he's actually the immoral one. Okay, so very quickly, when Daisy's friend, whose name I forget, is filling Nick in on the story of how she met Gatsby, she mentions that, they hit it off straight away, Gatsby and Daisy, and then she says he looked at her the way all girls want to be looked at. So it's just, just very, these, there's always these references to, this idea of, twin flame love and the divine masculine, and the sacred feminine, the goddess, because ultimately that divine union is about honoring the goddess within the partner who embodies the feminine energy, and honoring also the god in the partner that embodies the divine masculine. So here Gatsby is kind of honoring the goddess, in Daisy the sacred feminine. And then in contrast, we have Tom Buchanan, who, instead of honoring the goddess in a way that, makes her actually feel like he sees her as something divine, he buys her a string of expensive pearls. So again, just feeding into this toxic masculine, toxic feminine, socially conditioned alpha types, which is about buying the feminine, but the female sexuality, or even just affection, or whatever the feminine has to offer, is something. It's a commodity. It's something to be bought. Okay, so Gatsby and Daisy are also themselves not immune to falling into the toxic masculine feminine trap, as we see when Gatsby shows Daisy around his epic mansion, and she loves it, and he's trying to impress her with his status and wealth, by telling her that he fills his house with all sorts of amazing, influential people. And then, we see, them enjoying, their time together, getting reacquainted. Meanwhile, Lana Del Rey's anthem, "Will You Still Love Me When I'm No Longer Young and Beautiful," feeds into this, the fear that women who grow up in a society in which the toxic feminine is held up as, the ideal, the beautiful fool, as it were. And then, him trying to reassure her by saying, "Oh, you look like you should be on the cover of Vogue," because that is apparently, the highest status that you can achieve as this toxic feminine character. Now, when it comes to the significance of the green light represents not just Gatsby's yearning to be reunited with the object of his love and affection, Daisy, because of its proximity to her. Now that he has Daisy back in his life, the green light no longer holds this significance of this enchanted object, and it's kind of representative of us as humans. Human nature is kind of always yearning for something more, never satisfied, which is presented as something negative, but it doesn't have to be. There is always a positive and negative aspect to every single one of our traits, and the idea of always yearning and always wanting something more outside of ourselves can also be seen as the root of evolution, because once we decide that we want something, once we bring that into manifestation, then it's about the next thing. So that's what actually encourages our growth and our evolution. And let's not also forget that the color green, which I think some people who've broken down the symbolism in this film talk about how the color green represents money, and so it's somehow indicative of the his yearning for wealth. But I think actually I don't agree with that interpretation. Green is the color of the heart chakra. It represents love, and ultimately everything that we yearn for is motivated by love. Not necessarily love as in love for another, like romantic love, although in this case it is, and I'm going to go more into this later, but even the yearning for romantic love is ultimately motivated by this search for real love, which is unity consciousness, which is God. So I think the green of the heart chakra is representative of that yearning for love. So when we get the line, the F. Scott from the F. Scott Fitzgerald text and the Nick Carraway narration, which are the same thing in the Baz Luhrmann film, when the green light goes out, that's when Gatsby realizes that his list of enchanted objects, things that he's yearning for, has now diminished by one. It basically means that now that Daisy's back in his life, he can stop yearning for her. And ultimately, it's this yearning, it's this longing that keeps us going. It keeps us motivated, as it were, to keep on manifesting things. So now that the light has gone off, we're going to see his relationship with Daisy now start to deteriorate as he starts to essentially take her for granted, because he doesn't feel like he needs to still keep working for it.
I've seen the world, done it all, had my